It's great to have Greg Berkey here with us today. He's been with us 3 times now, 4 times, yeah. And the first time he was with us, the next week he called me and asked me to serve on the board of Automotive Racing Outreach. And that's very special to me because I love NASCAR and I love the 24 car and whatnot. So get a gander at his show car that he brought with him today. I'm going to ask Greg if he'd come on at this time and share with us what God has put on his heart.
Well, it's good to be back at Grace Baptist again, and it's been a while, though, since I've been back, but glad to see you folks once again, and it's been a busy, actually, couple of weeks for us. We've actually finished up our ministry with NASCAR a couple of weeks ago. They finished their season. But I'm going to, for those of you that are new, that have not met me or my family, I'm sorry that my family did not come with me today. We've been on the road for the last 2 weeks and covered almost 4,000 miles. And so we were in Tennessee last week. My wife's dad had his 90th birthday, so we went and spent some time over there. And then my father is all by himself up in Indiana. And so I went up there and spent Thanksgiving Day with him, came back on Friday, then turned back around again on Saturday, yes, to come be with you folks. So it's been quite the whirlwind. So I left my family at home to recuperate a little bit. And but they wish that they could be here, though. And but anyway, we're so glad and so thankful today that for your support for the multiple years that you guys have stood with us with Auto Racing Outreach. And so we'll tell you a little bit more about that, a little bit more about our family and what's been taking place. It's been a very unique year for us. We're thankful for all those that have trusted Christ, their Savior, through the ministry this year. So we have Auto Racing Outreach, and also we took a church a number of years ago called Community Baptist Church back in Hickory, North Carolina, where we're from. We basically took that church as a church replant. The church was about to die. It only had about 12 people in it. It was not doing very well. The former pastor had been there for 32 years, passed away, and they were struggling. And so I began filling pulpit for them on the weekends that I was not out at a racetrack and doing ministry on the road. And the Lord laid upon our heart to go ahead and take that upon as an additional part of our ministry as a church replant. So the church is doing well. It's beginning to grow again. So the church has gone from about 12 people to about 50 people again. So we're beginning to get to that point. The properties are paid off. We're trying to remodel a lot of the old buildings and different things. And so we're grateful for what God has done there. We've got one family that started coming in from this area, basically, well, 2 really. Some of you know the Sheets, Dr. Sheets and his wife. Yeah, they're sweet, sweet people. They began coming to our church a couple of years ago. They came to our area because their daughter and their son-in-law are from Hickory, North Carolina, and they based their ministry there. And so they started coming to our church, and so the parents started coming to their church, our church too. The Sheets also have brought a couple other single young people with them to the church, and so they've been a blessing. And in fact, I was not with my family for Thanksgiving, so my family went to be with the Sheets and their family. They're such people, they're so welcoming to other people. They just invited everybody to come to their family. So they took 25 people to, what was it, Cracker Barrel, but Bob Evans, and so they took over the place. But anyway, my family had a great time with them, and sweet folks. But anyway, Brother Sheets still teaches ancient languages at Tabernacle. Not Tabernacle, it is Tabernacle. The college, the Tabernacle Baptist College over here at Virginia Beach. And so he teaches online Hebrew and Greek and Aramaic. He also teaches some other schools and different things online too. And so it's kind of nerve-wracking in a way because he's an expert in all these things, and I'm just this podunk, country boy. But he's been always gracious about everything.
When he opens up his laptop.
I know, he just sits there. And you're wondering, he's comparing everything I say with you. But anyway, he's always been gracious. He's always encouraging to us. And so it's been a blessing to have them here with us in our church down there too, doing a great job. But let me kind of introduce you to myself and also to the ministry that God's called us to. And then we'll get into the Word a little bit later on. But I'm originally from Indiana. And so grew up around racing with the Indy 500, being about 15 minutes away from my house. So even as a kid, our family had a desire and had a love for racing. As a young person, I thought I would want to become a race car driver, but it takes a lot of money to do that. And so didn't have that. So I went to a Christian school there in Indiana, then went off to Bob Jones University. And while I was at Bob Jones, I had the goal of going back to Indiana and becoming a state trooper. So I began studying law at BJU. But while I was there, I got involved with a group of guys that were preacher boys that used to go out to a small town called Anderson, South Carolina, and do street preaching. We'd preach against, across some bars, and we'd take out gospel tracts, and we'd go down the streets and try to witness to people and all that kind of stuff. So God really began to use that on Friday nights to work in my heart about the call to preach. Literally the second place I ever preached on was on the streets. And did that every Friday night, became in love with that. And so by the end of my freshman year, I believe that God called me to preach, changed my major to Bible there at BJU, and studied that for the next few years. Also went back to grad school for a couple of years and finished there as well. Then the specific thing I was basically training for at BJU was for camp ministry. I had a great burden at that time in my life for young people and the next generation to receive Christ as their Savior. And I thought, what a great tool it is to use camp ministry to get young people away from their environment, from the TV, all those external things that distract them, get them out for a week of camp for a week where it's concentrated Bible teaching and preaching, and still a great tool. And so I began to study for that and went to the Wilds Christian Camp for 3 summers, trained there. And then God called me to, of all places, to a little place called Nova Scotia, Canada. And in Nova Scotia, Canada, they had just purchased a piece of property to develop a Christian camp up there. And so God's working in certain ways and meeting certain people at the right times. I met a guy that was going there on deputation. He says, we just purchased this piece of property. We're looking for a director. Would you be interested? So prayed about it. And God led us there to Nova Scotia for 10 years. Actually, I spent 16 years there altogether. So we were on the mission field in Canada doing camp ministry and also church planting up there. But also while we were there, I got involved in racing and became the chaplain basically for Canada NASCAR. And so I was doing camp ministry, doing church work, and then also became involved in racing in Canada. And so in 2006, the church planting work had grown to a place where they could take on their own pastor. And that was one of our goals. Also, the camp ministry had also matured to where actually the guys that had gone up through the ministry underneath me were able to take it over. And so we turned it over to the Canadians there as well. So that was our goals. And so my wife turns to me and asked me one day in 2006, what do you want to do now? I said, well, I really love this racing stuff. I said, it gives us opportunities to meet a lot of lost people that we would never meet before. And so I really enjoy doing that. And so we decided and prayed that we would move to Hickory, North Carolina in 2006 and get involved in NASCAR ministry through auto racing outreach. We didn't know anybody, had no idea what we were doing. And so we just moved down there, and God provided a house for us, a church for us to go to that was faithful, and just jumped into it. And God began to open doors and to make a way. It's been a process of years to learn the most effective ways to use this ministry and how to reach people for Christ in this environment. So whether you like it or not, in missions, every mission field has its own culture. And wherever field you go to, the missionary has to learn the language, learn the food, adapt to the culture, and reach the people within that culture. As American missionaries, it's a great temptation many times to go to that culture and try to make them Americans. That's not what God has called us to do. Or even build American churches. That's not what God has called us to do. He's called us to do New Testament churches. And so, in ministry. And so, in America, what's the culture in America? A big part of it is sports, isn't it? So, I've always believed in evangelism, that if God's going to call me into evangelism, that a lot of guys in evangelism, they go to local church and do revival meetings. Not against that. I've done many, many of them. But I thought, as an evangelist, as a missionary, let's go fishing where the fish are. Let's go where a lot of lost people are. And so NASCAR has this open opportunity that back in the 1970s, they began inviting ministry into NASCAR. And matter of fact, it's one of the rare opportunities in sports in America to have this opportunity. You don't see that anywhere else, where you have invocation prayer to start the race with. And they've also invited ministries to come out there in the campgrounds and minister to their people. A lot of the NASCAR tracks are owned and operated by Christian born-again believers. And so they want us there. One of the biggest places we do ministry is Charlotte Motor Speedway. Not far from us, but the owner's a Christian guy. And so we report to him how many people get saved at his tracks. He says, man, I love this, that people are actually getting saved at my events. And so they love that. Now it's beginning to change. Some of the younger leadership within NASCAR are more of the woke, and so we don't know how long this will last, but as long as the doors are there and they invite us to be there, we plan to be there with all these lost people. So we began Auto Racing Outreach in actually 2001, so next year will be our 25th anniversary. I cannot believe, I don't know where the time has gone to in all of this, except for my aging body. My body tells me differently. And so we're actually training my daughter now to take over leadership eventually, possibly as the next president of Auto Racing Outreach, to keep the ministry going. So we're training her to do so. She has a heart for this thing. She loves Auto Racing Outreach. She loves meeting lost people, spreading the gospel this way. She's not a preacher like I am, but we'll see. Maybe she'll marry a preacher. That would be good someday. By the way, she turns 29 in a couple of weeks here. And we're praying for God's will for her life. Just hasn't met the right guy yet, but we're praying about that for her. But she's a wonderful young lady, a godly young woman. But so my wife and I, we've been married for 32 years. We met on our way to Nova Scotia, and so she went with me there. And to have two children, Hannah, my oldest, and then my son Seth. He's also 21 years of age. My son Seth has Asperger's, a form of autism. And so he's still at home with us. He keeps pretty close to us, and yet he's also actively involved in the ministry too and loves the Lord. The neat thing about it is this past year is my son loves music. And so what's kind of neat is that one Sunday a month now, he sits with me on the platform and he directs the music for our church now. One Sunday a month. I've got another guy that does it the rest of the Sundays. But you know what? A couple of months ago, I was on the stage and I looked over my son and I said, this is pretty cool, that my whole family gets to be involved in ministry in some way. My daughter does all the electronics works and all this kind of stuff for the church too. So we're glad to be able to serve the Lord together. My wife, when I met her, she had a desire to serve the Lord full time. She wanted to marry a preacher. And so when I met her back 32 years ago, she interviewed me. So I took her out to eat. I think it was like a Golden Corral. I think we took her out to. I wanted to impress her, and all of that. When really all she wanted was Taco Bell. And so I learned that later on. But anyway, she says, okay, so she was a Christian school teacher for 7 years in a small Christian school, taught kindergarten, first and second grade all together in the same class. And then after that, we went to the mission field, began homeschooling our kids. But she began to interview me when our very first date. She says, I want to marry a preacher. And she says, what Bible do you use? I said, I use the King James. And she says, okay. So I passed that test, I guess. So but anyway, that's what I use. That's what I've always just used. And so I'm too old to change now. I can't memorize anything else. So anyway, she asked me all this. And anyway, I guess I passed the test. We got married about 6 months later. But anyway, godly woman. So in 2006, we moved to Hickory, North Carolina to begin Auto Racing Outreach with the goal of taking the gospel to the United States. When we came back on furloughs from Canada, every time that we came back, we would notice big changes in America. I don't think any of us would disagree that America now is a mission field. We're drying up. We are at a place now that we need to replant and re-sow America again. Our churches are shrinking. Our churches are dying. Young men are not answering the call to preach. At Bob Jones, we used to have a thing called Preacher Boys, and we used to have 300 preacher boys there. And now I don't think the class even exists anymore. They have seminary now, but I don't think, does Preacher Boys even exist anymore? I don't think they do. And so it used to be, and I follow several different websites on Bob Jones, and you don't even see any mention about any of that any longer. So the emphasis there has changed a lot too. And so, but that's everywhere now. And so things have changed a great deal. And so we're losing 4,000 churches a year. Now, some of them are not good. A lot of them are not good churches. You understand that. They were dead and liberal anyway, but we are losing a lot of good churches too. I know personally of a lot of churches, hundreds of churches that are looking for pastors right now that are good churches. They can't find anybody to fill pulpits anywhere. I've been asked multiple times myself, would you be interested in coming here or there or whatever else? And I said, well, no, not God hasn't called me to do that yet. So, but you just, the needs have changed in America. And of course, too, because of the loose immigration policies, America's changed even culturally. I've been in several different hotels in the last couple of weeks as we traveled. They're all being taken over by folks outside of the U.S. And we could debate all of that and go back and forth, but the fact of the matter is that all these different cultures and people from around the world are here in America now. That's a whole nother mission field. And so, instead of actually even sending a lot of our missionaries to foreign fields, God's sending these people to us. So how do we reach them for Jesus Christ? Whether you're for it or against it politically, the fact of the matter is they're here. They're here, and they're lost, and they need Jesus. And so how do we reach them for the Lord and make a difference in their lives? And so how do we invite them to Christ? And so that's all changed. But again, sports is a big part of this. And so let me tell you kind of about what we do when we go to our racetrack. Because this is so unique, this is so outside the box compared to, I'm an independent fundamental Baptist, and this is really different compared to what we do. So you've seen the car when you came in here. So one of the things that we do is that we use NASCAR show cars. And so for a number of years, we've actually used actual NASCARs that we've actually used. And so we'd trailer them different places and get them off. They had the 850 horsepower engines in them and all that. What that does is that's a magnet. And this actually gets people to us instead of us going to people. Matter of fact, as I drive the one out there down the highway, I'm always getting opportunities to talk to people because they approach me. If you pull into a gas station, even last night, about an hour away, I pulled in to get gas, and people will come to the car, can I take a picture? So on the inside of the car, and when we go to these NASCAR tracks, we have NASCAR literature that has the gospel on the back of them. This is one of the most recent ones. But what we like to do is partner with NASCAR drivers that have a good testimony of salvation. And they have what's called their own, what they call hero cards. It usually has their own picture on their front, a picture of their car. And so we came up and developed an idea that let's take that idea, because NASCAR fans collect these things and they keep them, and do NASCAR driver hero cards, and we'll put the gospel on the back of them. And so we have, I don't know how many tens or even hundreds of thousands of these cards we've passed out and sold everywhere that we go to. So even in the car out there, I keep these in the glove box and in the center console, that when people come to talk to me and take pictures of the car at a gas station, I always give these out. Something also that we started doing a couple of years ago that we found very effective is that NASCAR drivers have what they call NASCAR die-cast cars. They make them bigger. They also have the smaller ones. And so we contacted the company that actually manufactures these. These are down in Charlotte. And so we get the old stock that are 1 or 2 years old. So we get them discounted, a big discount on them. And so we buy these things up. So what we'll do is we'll actually sometimes at a NASCAR track, we'll set up a tent. We'll do chapel service out there because a lot of times the races are on Sundays. Don't agree with that, but that's how it is. So on a Saturday or a Sunday, sometimes we'll be partnering with a local group, a local church group, that they'll serve breakfast, invite people over, and we'll have a gospel service. I actually will preach the gospel during that breakfast time, give an invitation. Then also, we like to take the NASCAR that we have out there and drive that around the campgrounds. And so they have all these like gypsy mobile campgrounds. Everybody comes in from all over across the states, and literally from around the world, you'll meet people that are there camping for the entire weekend. And so we'll take our car, drive it around the campground, roll down the windows, and we actually pass these out to everybody in the campground, because they come and they take their picture with the car. They come to us and say, here, take these. We like these. And so very rarely we have anybody say, no, I don't want these. So what that does It's a sowing gospel seed, giving something of value to them that they will like and enjoy and appreciate. And so we know that, matter of fact, many times when we leave, we'll actually watch them reading the back of the car as we pull away. So, NASCAR. So we often joke that we are your missionary to the underdressed and the overbeveraged.
That's needed.
We are your missionaries to the redneck, basically. So, but I tell you what, it's just where people are today. And so it's just taking this unique opportunity to take the gospel to a lot of people. A lot of these people are not going to come to church first. And so a lot of the folks, when we started Auto Race and Outreach, I asked the Lord for 1,000 souls. I said, God, would you give us 1,000 people that would trust Christ with this ministry? And I understand the Lord knows the real numbers and all that takes place. And I don't know how many have maybe even gotten saved that we have no idea through the sowing of the seed. But the fact of the matter is we just try to be faithful sowing the seed and trust God that God will take it and God will use that. And so we know that when at least they go home, they have this. When they're not drunk, when the party's over, or in their loneliness of their own heart and their own mind and all the frustrations and things of life have come back to them, they don't have the party anymore. The gospel is there. And so that's why we sow the seed there, and we trust God for that. But we've seen about 800 people trust Christ as their Savior through the last number of years that we know of. Many of them are in church today. We followed up on. And we've seen God take that and bless that and use that. But there's so much more work to be done. It seems like sometimes you go to a racetrack, it seems like we just a drop in the bucket. Somebody reminded me, though, a lot of drops. If everybody's putting a drop in, that bucket eventually will get filled up. Eventually, just one drop at a time. So that's what we do in a nutshell. So we're doing some new projects actually this next year. So we just stocked up with a bunch of new ones. By the way, if you'd like to take some of these home, please do. We also developed, my daughter did, a bag that we hand out. So a lot of NASCAR fans like these, the drawstring where it makes into a backpack. And so we'll put also our gospel literature in a die-cast card in here. We'll hand these out as well. So I brought these, and so if you'd like to take one home or a couple home with you, please do. If you've got kids, grandkids that would like the cards, please. We have literally, we just ordered 1,000 of them. And so please take and avail yourself to that. Some of the things that we're doing actually for the next new year, what time do I need to be over with, brother?
45.
Okay, all right, we got another 20 minutes here. So we're making some changes for the next new year for 25-year anniversary. So let me tell you about this car that's sitting out here. This is a neat story, is that being involved in NASCAR, I've been involved with a number of Christian NASCAR teams through the years. One of them was called McDonald Motorsports. And McDonald Motorsports, Christian team owner, and he wanted to use his team as an evangelistic tool. So God put us together very uniquely. I told them that we do show cars. Would you be interested? He said, absolutely. So they got a NASCAR driver, which Pastor would know, by the name of Michael McDowell. And Michael now has won the Daytona 500. He's also won another big race in Indianapolis, the Brickyard 400. Michael is a solid Christian young man, and probably could be a preacher. So what Michael does is on the race weekends, he actually uses race hauler where they haul all the stuff to the racetrack, the big semi. And he actually holds a Bible study in his race hauler every weekend for other drivers. They do prayer meeting together, they pray with each other, do Bible study. So he's discipling other drivers in their Christian walk with the Lord. So for a number of years, Michael and I partnered together in ministry. We still do some today. Matter of fact, I talked to him last spring. But I still do hero cards for him. So we developed a show car for Michael, and so he'd race on the track. We did a show car for him that I would do out in the campgrounds and around the track and all of that, and for him, and so that made the contact for him. So we also did a thing for a number of years called Finish a Winner, where we would show up on Thursdays before a race, and we'd find a local church to do ministry at. So we do men's meetings and all of that and try to bring unsaved people into these church meetings and have an opportunity for them to give their testimony as a driver. We'd have the show car there and all these kind of other events, and we saw multiple people come to Christ through that. Through doing that, I met another guy in doing show cars. And so in doing NASCAR teams always had what they called show cars. And so they didn't race them, but it was the actual cars, and they would take them around for show. And so I got to meet a lot of the other show car drivers and guys who would do things for other teams. And one of them was a fellow by the name of Bill DeMoss. And Bill was an unbeliever, but he got invited to one of these show car events or one of these Finish a Winter events one time in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I got to meet him there. And he actually did a show car for Geico. Did that for a number of years, for 12 years. And so through the years, Bill and I traveled together. We would help each other load and unload our cars and do different stuff. And I would invite him to go to services, even as an unbeliever, trying to witness to Bill. And so, but then COVID hit. And NASCAR, all the fan stuff got shut down. So we're all trying to figure out what to do. And so there's a very large racing convention in Indianapolis every year called the, what do they call that? Performance Racing Industry Show. Everything racing. 50,000 people show up for this thing all across the world. It takes 2 convention centers to hold it and to do all this stuff. I've always wanted to be a part of that, but it cost about $50,000 for one little 10 by 10 spot, so no way to do that. Well, God provided an opportunity for us to go to that for free one year. So we took a show car there with us and set up, and again, we're just coming out of COVID, and I hadn't seen Bill, my friend, for a couple of years. And we're there with the car, talking to people, handing out gospel literature, doing our thing there and all of that, and meeting all these people around here, and a great time. And a guy comes up behind me and says, "Greg," and I turned around and looked up, and I didn't recognize him. He had a mask on and a beard. He said, "It's Bill." I said, "Bill, it's great to see you." He said, "I got to tell you that it's been rough over the last little while. Since I now have cancer, I've been battling and not doing very well. This is my girlfriend down in Florida. She just lost her life and all of that, so it's been rough." And so we talked for a while. He went on his way, and I really wanted to witness to Bill again. I could tell he wasn't doing well. And so I went back to the hotel, or actually my dad's house I stayed with there, and I said, "Lord, would you please allow Bill to come back tomorrow, even though he's weak?" And the next day he did. And I talked to Bill. I says, "Bill, there's something I want to share with you." I said, "If you died from this, do you know for sure you're going to heaven?" He said, "No, I don't." I said, "Let's go behind the car and let me get my Bible and share with you how you can know for sure you're going to go to heaven." And amidst all the chaos and all the stuff going around there, Bill prayed and asked the Lord to save him at that event. So he went back home, and I kind of lost contact with Bill for a little while. And I found out, I followed him on Facebook, and he had 3 months to live after that and passed away. I'd never met his mom, and so I contacted his mom through Facebook, and I said, "I know you don't know who I am." I said, "I'm a good friend of Bill's through NASCAR." And I said, "I don't know if this matters to you, but I had an opportunity to lead Bill to the Lord 3 months ago." And immediately she writes back and says, "Oh, Greg," I says, I've been wanting to contact you and let you know what's been taking place." It says, "As Bill's mom, I've been praying for years that Bill would come to Christ." I had no idea. I'd never met the lady before. Bill came from a divorced home situation. And so his father took him to the Episcopal church, growing up. And so that's all he knew. And she says, "I want you to know that the night that Bill came home, he could hardly walk the door because he was so weak. But he said, 'Mom, I'm going to heaven.' He says, I asked Jesus to save me." And he says, "We were so thrilled about that." And so, she said that, in fact, we're about to have his funeral. She says, I volunteered to come up and do his funeral, but they had found a gospel preacher to come do it. Says, "The Bible that you sent, Bill, with the verses that you marked, he's going to use that during the funeral time." And had the gospel in the back of the Bible. We have New Testaments we have that have a NASCAR cover on it and has the gospel on the back and has all the Bible verses actually outlined in it about how to be saved in these New Testaments. She says she's going to use that. Matter of fact, we're going to place it in the casket with him as well before he passes away or before we bury him. But as a result of that, I had no idea that his mother lived where I grew up from, about an hour and a half away in Illinois. I had no idea this, but I used to be, when I was in Canada, a fan club regional coordinator for the Jeff Gordon Club. Little did I know that she also was one. She was one of Jeff Gordon's original fan fan club directors. And so she had been to my hometown, Little Pittsburgh, Indiana, multiple times with Jeff and all of this. I said, what we want to do is we want to actually develop a Jeff Gordon show car, because that was my driver and all of that. I grew up with Jeff in my hometown and all of that. He says, I'll tell you what, all the proceeds from Bill's funeral, instead of flowers, we're going to put toward the show car. It was paid for by all of this. I had no idea. No idea that God was going to put that all together. So this has been probably one of the most effective show cars we've ever used, because I can't just put it on a trailer and tow it everywhere, but I can drive it everywhere now as a car, and it's been very, very effective. And so God arranged for all this to happen through me meeting Bill, through me meeting his mom, and his mom has actually been a very active supporter of auto racing now, and so she's very actively involved. So one of the things we're going to do this year is change the paint scheme. This is the Jeff Gordon original paint scheme that is most familiar with, and so Jeff only drove that paint scheme for 2 races. We did it because I found a red car. So, but we're actually going to have the whole entire car repainted this year to this one. It's more iconic, it's more recognizable, and it's more colorful. And so we think it'll be actually a little bit more effective than even this one will be. And so God provided the money for us to do that next year. So we're doing that. We're updating some of our equipment this year. God provided, Pastor Carnton knows about this, but we had a gift come in this year that we were not expecting. A little old lady in West Virginia that supported our ministry for a number of years for $100 a month. And I didn't even know where she got that money from. And this past year, we received a notification that she had passed away. And she left Auto Racing Outreach as a part of her estate giving. And so had no idea that she had even this money saved up. Her husband was a businessman, sold the business. She lived in a small little house. She had no children. And so she gave us a pretty good gift to actually do some things. We've been working on a shoestring budget for so long, for so many years. We're grateful for how God's provided and been faithful through it all. But we actually get to do some things this year. We just upgraded a truck we had a 2000 F-250 we've towed everything with for a number of years. And it was a great truck. I would drive that to the ends of the world. It was a great truck. But it was an extended cab, and my kids are both full-grown adults now. It's just too small in the back for them, and there's a little jump seat. So we're able to upgrade to a little bit bigger truck for them. And so we're grateful for that, and invest in a lot of gospel literature too. So in a nutshell, that is about everything. And so kind of what we do. And again, we're so grateful. It works out. God's designed me in such a way that we get to go out and evangelize on the weekends, either at a NASCAR track. We're also involved now in drag racing. We're also involved in local track ministry as well. We're also involved in the church ministry. So we get to go on the weekends and then come back, and I get to disciple and be a pastor too. Missionary pastor basically still as well. So thank you for all that you guys have faithfully done so many years to keep us on the road to do these kind of things. You know, it takes a lot of people to get the gospel out. I'm going to read, I've got a few minutes, and I'm just going to read a verse here, a passage out of 1 Corinthians chapter 3 for Sunday school this morning. 1 Corinthians chapter 3. The Corinthian church was arguing about who the greatest personalities were to follow in Christianity, whether it be Christ or whether it be Paul or Apollos. So the Apostle Paul, in this conflict that they're having, addresses the problem with this. And he tells them and reminds them in verse 5 of chapter number 3, who then is Paul? And who is Apollos but ministers by whom you believed, even as the Lord gave to every man? I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then neither is he that planteth anything, neither is he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. You know, what a great passage that is that no matter what area you serve the Lord in, it's all important. And we're all one in this thing. You know, we could think that, you know, we have this big flashy ministry in NASCAR. And by the way, it's not that flashy anyway. Again, it was just missionaries to the redneck and to that kind of those folks there. But, you know, drive a fancy car or whatever else be the case. But the fact of the matter is we're all one in the gospel. in trying to get the gospel out to lost people, whether it's around the world to foreign missions or here now in American missions. But it's all important. Those who give, those who go, those who do your own ministry. And I try to encourage people is that ministry is changing a little bit in America. It's not, I grew up doing door-to-door a lot. I don't know how many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of doors I've knocked on. But I'll be honest with you, that's changed, especially since COVID. For 7 years in Hickory, I knocked on doors and didn't see one convert or no one come to church. Not one. We were faithful. We did it. We were out there, but we didn't see anything basically as a result come from that. And so that has changed, especially COVID, because nobody wants you on your doorstep because they don't know what you have, where you've come from, what you may be carrying. So the whole attitude toward that has changed a lot. And so stuff like this still works now. And so we've had to change our strategy a little bit. We try to be faithful, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know how many of these we've passed out. And so I don't know what the results of this is, But what we're trying to do is sow a seed, or maybe we're somewhere in the process where we water the seed, and sometimes we're fortunate enough to see the harvest come with somebody coming to Christ. So I don't know where we are in that plan, in that, it takes a lot of people to touch a life many times to lead us one soul to Christ. It really does. It takes a lot. And, sometimes we're looked upon that I'm the guy out there at these chapel services, I'm doing the preaching, and I do the invitation, and we see the people get saved during that. But you know what? What about the people who got up early in the morning who prepared all the food for the breakfasts to get these people to come to the tent? They are just as important, and they will have their reward as investing their life into those souls that come to Christ. It's just as important. So whether you're cleaning the church, or whether you're visiting, or whether you're doing whatever ministry, whatever you're doing for the Lord, do it for the Lord, and let God take it and see people come to Christ. Because if you're faithful, you may not see the results here, but God knows what the results are. For many of the folks that have gotten saved through the ministry of Auto Race and Outreach, you have invested into it, and you will never see them until maybe the one day you get to heaven. And maybe you get the privilege to meet those folks and say, thank you for giving so that I could hear the gospel. I know of one, Bill, for sure, who is there because people gave and God opened doors, and it just takes faithfulness and all of these things. But again, a lot of times we forget, no matter how small it may seem, that our part is. And my wife sometimes has told me, you're out there doing this work, and we're out there with you. We have a travel trailer in our truck sometimes we take to these racetracks, and we'll go out there as a family. And my wife is out there serving the breakfasts, and we have a kids' corner that actually will do a tent that my wife runs with all kinds of games for kids and prizes and stuff. So that's very popular. We'll do Pinewood Derby cars for the kids, and we actually run just like a NASCAR race for them, do trophies. So my wife and my kids do a lot of that. And she says, you know what, sometimes, though, when you're on the road by yourself, she says, I wonder where I fit in. And I remind her, honey, you're holding my arms up so I can do this. So you're helping me to send me out and keeping me going, and that's part of your ministry. You're training our kids for the Lord and for the ministry. That's your ministry. And it all goes together, y'all. It does. So there's no reason to envy anybody else, to covet anybody else, to wonder, I wish I had this or that, or I wish, we had different ministries and all of that. No, it's all important. We just need to be reminded of that. But God will give the increase because He is the Lord of the harvest. It's all in His hands. All right, God bless you. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. And we'll talk to you again later on. Yes?
We need to remember, too, that God's word does not return void.
Correct.
When you give it out, the Holy Spirit, you say, Holy Spirit, that's your job. And He'll use that word that you're giving out there. It's a blessing.
Yeah, the Lord has to remind me it's not my responsibility, it's His. I'm just the messenger. That's all. That's a good reminder. It is. All right, thank you all.